This is the Parliament Channel and Parliament Radio 105.5 FM.
Good morning. Good morning all. Welcome first to all of our loyal viewers and listeners to the Parliament Channel. We have viewers on the Parliament Channel. We have listeners on Parliament Radio. We also have the online resources, the ParlView. We welcome all of the participants in the general public. We also would like to welcome all officials who are here with us today to this, the 22nd meeting of the Joint Select Committee on Social Services and Public Administration. This is our committee's second public hearing pursuant to our inquiry into the state of contract employment in the public service. Our committee is social services and public administration, so it is in the context of our public administration remit that the committee held the view that we needed to look at this concept of contract employment in Trinidad and Tobago in all its ramifications. I would like to advise members of the public who are looking on at this time to send any comments that they would like the committee to consider or any questions that they have using the various social media platforms which are available to them so that we can obtain public participation as well, since this is a subject that has generated a tremendous amount of interest in the general population. I would, at this point in time, ask members on today's panel to introduce themselves, and what I will do, since we are fortunate today to have a large number of representatives, so we shall be well informed. The population of Trinidad and Tobago, hopefully at the end of this morning's hearing, should understand the nature of contract employment in Trinidad and Tobago in a greater level of detail. We have officials from the Ministry of Public Administration and Communication, officials from the Ministry of Finance, officials from the Public Services, the Service Commission's Department and the Public Service Commission, and the Personnel Department Chief Personnel Officer. I will ask first officials from the Ministry of Public Administration and Communications to introduce themselves by name for now. Before I will then ask the representatives from each organization to give us brief opening remarks, but we just need the introductions now by way of name and title designation. Ministry of Public Administration and Communications.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. Joan Mendez, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Public Administration and Communications.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. Claudel McKellar, Deputy Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Public Administration and Communications. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee, colleagues. Savitri Balkaran, Acting Director of the Public Management Consulting Division, PMCD, of the Ministry of Public Admin and Communications.
Thank you. Are there any other officials from your ministry, Madam Permanent Secretary?
No, no other officials.
Thank you very much. Ministry of Finance?
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Michelle Durham Kisoon, Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lizanne Bagu-Sibaran, Acting Director, Human Resources.
Acting Director, Human Resources?
Human Resources,
Okay.
Ministry of Finance.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee and colleagues. I'm Catherine Laban, Controller of Accounts, Treasury Division, Ministry of Finance.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joycelyn Thomas Vialmosa, Acting Deputy Controller of Accounts.
Thank you. Okay, and that concludes the representation from the Ministry of Finance. Okay, Public Service Commission, and are there any other Service Commission departments? Public Service Commission, representatives from PS.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I am Maureen Manchuk, Chair of the Public Service Commission.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I am Mrs. Anmol Singh Mahabir, Deputy Chairman, Public Service Commission.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I am Clive Pigas, member of the Public Service Commission.
Yes. Service Commission Department.
Good morning, Chair and members. I'm Prabhavati Miraj, Acting Director of Personal Administration.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Margaret Morales. I'm the Acting Deputy Director of Personal Administration, Service Commissions Department.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chair and members. I am Natasha Citron, Legal Advisor, Service Commissions Department.
Okay, thank you. Right. Thank you very much. We now move to the department, the Personnel Department Office, Chief Personnel Officer.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee, colleagues. My name is Angela Siniswi-Jeve, Chief Personnel Officer.
Yes.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. I am Wendy Barton, Deputy Chief Personnel Officer, Acting.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Juliet Gonzalez. I'm the Acting Director, Benefits Management Division, Personnel Department.
Morning, Chair, members of the committee. I am Farida John, Acting Senior Human Resource Officer.
Yes, and that's it. And let me thank all of the officials here with us today for appearing before the committee. I think with the cadre that we have and with the range of representatives, we should get the answers today for our queries on contract employment in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Before I ask representatives to make brief opening remarks to us, I will invite my colleagues on the JSC to briefly introduce themselves, and I will start with on my right. Khadija.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Khadija Amin, Opposition Senator, member of the committee.
Good morning, everyone. Esmond Ford, member, chairman, vice chairman of the committee.
Yes. MP.
Good morning, all, and welcome. My name is Christine Uwalo Hussain, member.
Good morning, all. Brigadier General Ansel Antoine, member.
Yes, and good morning. I am Independent Senator Dineshwar Mahavir, chairman of the committee. I will, at this time, ask representatives from each of the organizations, a representative from each of the organizations, to give us some brief opening remarks. Yeah. And before I do that, I'd like to remind all of our viewers and listeners on the objectives of today's inquiry. The 4 objectives are as follows. 1, to gather information on the prevalence of contract employment in ministries and statutory bodies in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. 2, to examine the terms and conditions of employment of contract workers. 3, to assess, very important, the adequacy of existing arrangements in place to manage and/or regulate contract employment. And 4, to evaluate the impact of contract employment on the overall efficiency of the public service. At this time, I will ask the following representatives to make some brief opening remarks. By brief, I mean maybe a minute and a half to 2 minutes maximum, and that will then start the inquiry from members of the committee. May I ask Ms. Joan Mendez, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Public Administration and Communications, to offer her brief opening remarks to the committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I thank you for being here this morning. It is an honor that the Ministry of Public Administration and Communications can appear before Parliament to provide information regarding the operations and also to gain recommendations arising from these meetings to help us shape public policy. Amongst the key initiatives that the Ministry of Public Administration engage in relate to public service transformation, ICT policy planning, public communications and information, and of course, through our Public Management Consulting Division, we treat with issues regarding contract employment. The Public Management Consulting Division provides organizational design services to ministries and departments. They help the ministries and departments determine new or revised structures as well as jobs in ministries and departments. Most times, these jobs can be established offices and at specialized areas contract. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mendez. May I ask Ms. Michelle Durham Kisoon, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Acting Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair, members, ladies and gentlemen. The Ministry of Finance is pleased to be a part of this discussion to look into the impact of contract employment. We continue to work with ministries and departments in helping them realize their goals and managing their talents in the ministries. And we continue to advise ministries and departments to manage their expenditure and to prioritize. We look forward to contributing to the recommendations that will come out of these deliberations, and we look forward to the discussions this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Michelle Kisoon. Ms. Maureen Manchuk, Chairman of the Public Service Commission.
Thank you, Chair. I thank you for inviting members of the Commission to be here this morning. The mandate of the Commission, according to the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, is to appoint, promote, transfer, and exercise disciplinary control over public officers. The Commission plays no role in with respect to contract appointments, and I can deal with more of what we think about contracts and how we see it later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chuk. Ms. Gervais, Acting Chief Personnel Officer.
Good morning again. The Personnel Department welcomes the opportunity to assist this committee in these very important deliberations on the issue of contract employment in the public service. As you may be aware, the Personnel Department is responsible for determining and advising on pay and terms and conditions of employment of a wide range of persons in the public service. Through consultation and negotiation with the appropriate recognized associations and unions, the department determines terms and conditions of service for monthly paid officers in the civil, teaching, police, fire, prison services, and the statutory authorities subject to the Act. We are also responsible for the determination of terms and conditions of employment for daily rated workers and contract employees. We advise on a wide range of HR issues in the public service, and it is in this regard that there is a committee headed by the Permanent Secretary to the Prime Minister. The committee was set up to review the state of contract employment in the public service. The department played a major role in this review in collaboration with the Ministry of Public Administration and Communications, as well as the Ministry of Labor. And the report of that committee is currently before Cabinet for consideration. We welcome the opportunity to provide any assistance that we can to this committee in its deliberations on this very important issue to the public service. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your opening remarks. You have set the stage for a discussion which hopefully will clarify a number of issues. There was agreement that MP Nawala Hussain would start the questioning on our behalf, but she has decided to allow the chair to exercise his prerogative. And so on the last occasion that we met with the representatives, a number of issues emerged. When the PS Ministry of Finance indicated to the committee that contract employees, that's Ms. Kisoon from what I recall, contract employees may have to wait perhaps a year and a half, sometimes 2 years, to obtain their final payments. I wondered why was it taking so long. And second, a number of issues arose when the chief personnel officer, the representative of the CPO's office, appeared before us. We wanted to find out what can be done to enable the office of the CPO to discharge its functions more efficiently. So the first question I want to pose arising out of last occasion's hearing is to the Comptroller of Accounts. The Comptroller of Accounts ultimately must prepare these pension checks. Her office, not she, her office must prepare the pension checks. I would like to get from you, and I have gotten from you before in another capacity, the reason for the delay when we are dealing with workers who are not contract employees, workers who are 60 years old and they are leaving the public service as per the regulations and so on. The reasons for the delay in making those payments, the gratuity payments for that category. I would ask of you, what are the reasons for the delay with respect to a contract employee who has a 3-year contract with the state? The contract has come to an end, and he or she is still waiting maybe 9 months later to obtain his final gratuity payment. What is the reason for the delay in general for that final check to be produced? Comptroller of Accounts.
Chair, first let me say, if all the documents are submitted on time and they are accurate, it would usually take 4 to 6 months for a contract payment to be made. However, if there are errors in the documents submitted, if ministries submit late, the documentation late, and there are also errors in the computation, it could take up to, well, from 6 months to 1 to 2 years. It also all depends on the promptness of the response from the ministries. When we ask them for queries and we ask for the amendments or changes, the time taken for the ministries to respond to the Treasury Division.
Thank you very much, Comptroller. Comptroller, we are solutions-based in this committee. We like to fix the problem. You are overall in charge of the Comptroller's office. I understand you too would like to obtain additional staff and maybe facilities. I want to put forward to you the following recommendation. Suppose you were to receive from whoever is supposed to supply 10 additional contract workers with knowledge in reviewing these retirement files. If you get 10 additional contract employees on a 2-year or 3-year contract working in your office, will that have a significant effect on reducing the time for processing these final payments? And if 10 won't do, how much additional workers, contract workers with basic accounting training that you require in order to ensure that a contract worker can receive his payment 90 days after he has demitted office?
Yes, it would help significantly. However, the problem is also with the ministries in the errors that we find, and at times the ministries take up to a few weeks to 6 to 9 months to respond to this division with the amendments.
Okay, so there are two problems. One is a staffing problem in your department, and one is a response problem from the ministry. we will pose the response problem to the Ministry, I'd imagine, of Public Administration. We do need to remove that particular impediment. But from your experience, if the ministries reply within a reasonable period, and a reasonable period, I take it to mean a request is sent out from your department to any ministry for information on a worker's file, what is the reasonable length of time you think ought to elapse before you get the information that they require? I'm looking at normal, reasonable period. Is it 2 weeks? Is it 4 weeks? How much time do you think they should elapse before the ministry supplies the information, and how much time normally elapses with respect to their tardiness?
Should at least a month for the most.
Okay, very well. So we have immediately solutions coming out. First, the Comptroller of Accounts will require some more staff. Comptroller, how much staff would you like to get to process these payments? Contract employees, someone with basic accounting training, should not be hard to obtain. You ought to know the qualifications. You're in charge of that ministry. Would you say 15 additional officers will certainly expedite the work of your department?
No. With respect to contract employment, right now, currently, we have 2 persons on short-term employment in the ministry assisting us. A further 3 persons would do.
A further 3 persons will do. So we will have to find out who in the cadre before us can supply to the Comptroller of Accounts 3 additional persons. And Comptroller, I want to get it clear, you're not looking for people with ACCAs. You're looking for people with accounting training who can clear the files. And you know would you say that there's a large supply of these people in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, a relatively decent supply of the people that you need?
I cannot say, but the persons who we have hired are persons who worked in the pensions branch and have the experience. And they are retired Treasury officers of the pensions. However, I'd just like to state as well that we recently did a draft note to Cabinet for the extension of additional staff in the pensions branch, and that note was for 20 persons in the various areas of the pensions department, not just contracts, but for the monthly paid, the accounting unit, all the affected areas. So in total, it would be 20 persons in the relevant areas.
Right. Excellent, Comptroller of Accounts. I now know that you need 20 additional persons. And if you get the 20 additional persons and the ministries are compliant within your 1-month time frame, do you think in general with contract, I know the issues with full-time employees, people who have switched ministries and so on. I know there may be some problems with their files. But in general, if ministries are compliant in responding to your request within a 1-month time frame, can you say with your full complement of staff, you will be able to provide the contract employees in Trinidad and Tobago in general, within a 3-month period of demitting office, their final payments?
Yes, we should. However, can I say that we also have another solution for the payment of contracts?
Sure, please provide a solution to us.
The other initiative we are looking at right now is decentralizing the contract payments back to 2 ministries and departments. We did the necessary research, and there was no legal impediment towards letting the ministries are the ones that compute the contract gratuities. It's a simple calculation. It's 20% of the gross amount paid over the 1 to 3 years, and it's a simple calculation. Now, if we decentralize to the ministries, give the accounting officers the responsibilities, that should greatly help in the payment of the contract gratuities on time. And that is an initiative we started recently, and we are speaking to the relevant stakeholders right now with the objective of getting this started in the new financial year. Because let me also say that the pensions branch get approximately 3,000 contract payments to process every year. Out of that, 1,000 are new contracts every year. The other 2,000 are renewals.
Right. Before there's a follow-up, Madam Comptroller, who has to give the accounting officers in the various ministries that authority and power of which you speak?
Well, I would need approval from the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance.
So basically, this is an administrative matter.
Yes.
While we are working on the administrative matters, suppose you get your 20 additional employees in short shrift. You are saying that you, with 20 additional employees in the short term, will be able to shorten the time period that Ms. Durham-Kisoon told us normally takes for individuals to receive their payment from 1.5 years, 2 years, to basically 90 days, which to my mind is the target I'd be looking at as reasonable. You're saying with your full complement of staff, there is no good reason why you should not be able to make these payments within a 90-day period.
Yeah, no,
and once you decentralize, it should even be less.
Yes.
Very well.
Right.
Yeah, follow-up?
Just a follow-up, Comptroller, and that is, you're indicating this is for contract workers that you're going to decentralize. But for public officers who have their pensions and so forth, I don't know the process, and perhaps if you take me through the process, barring the lack of staffing. If a file comes to you indicating that, that someone has completed their duties and they're ready for pension and so forth, and there are errors, you would normally write the ministry, the relevant ministry, and indicate. Is it there are persons who have been waiting sometimes 10 years, I'm aware of. What happens when this file, an outstanding file, is on your desk? Is it that the process is that you have written, and whenever the response returns to you, that is when it is actually dealt with? Or is there any follow-up? Is there any member of staff who can actively go through the process of calling the ministry, calling the permanent secretary, and ensuring that something is done, or is it just left up to whenever a response is returned to you?
No, it isn't left to when we get the responses. We BU the file for between 3 weeks to a month to take follow-up action. But also when the letters are sent out, we call the persons in the relevant ministries to let them know these are outstanding. Additionally, we have established liaison officers in most of the ministries, so they are the points of contact that we would call to ensure that we get back these documentations on time.
So we have someone with 10 years who have been waiting, because I do know of persons who are waiting quite some time. 10 years. How many letters would leave your department and go to the ministry or the permanent secretary asking for this request to be forthcoming?
I cannot say. We are speaking about public officers.
Officers, yes. Public officers.
Now, they are usually, with the pension and leave records, normally there are periods of service that are missing from ministries. And these cause delays in the ministries sending us the responses. Sometimes you have realignment of ministries, and that also causes problems in the processing of
Excellent. So as such, we have the PSC indicating that your position, your mandate according to your opening statement, your mandate according to the Constitution is to appoint, promote, transfer of public officers and discipline. Not so? You have discipline as well? Yes. Right? So if it is that for years and years and years we have this common mistake, what is being done to actually discipline the necessary persons who have these HR issues outstanding, because it's a common practice?
Well, first of all, it is a management issue from what you're speaking about, and therefore it has to originate from the ministry or the permanent secretary, the director of HRs in the ministry, has to recognize it as a discipline issue, if it is in fact a discipline issue, or it perhaps is a management issue, and that needs to be rectified within the ministry.
Okay, very well. We'll come back to that, but there are a number of follow-ups. I will ask Brigadier Antoine to come in with his follow-up. Then I will ask Deputy Speaker to follow Brigadier Antoine and Senator Amin to come in afterwards. So we move in the order of Brigadier Antoine first on his follow-up.
Yes, good morning. I'm hearing from, and we have here a range of public servants from various ministries, etc. I'm only hearing phone call. Tell me what prevents a messenger taking a file from one ministry and going to a next ministry and expediting this matter very quickly. What prevents that? Because I'm not hearing anything about a messenger or anybody or clerk carrying a file from ministry to ministry or ministry to statutory body. It's all about phone call. You put a phone call, you put a BU for next month or next 3 months, and then you put a BU, and then you put a BU, and nothing is happening. What prevents somebody walking a file from one ministry to the next one and expediting this matter?
Anyone, will that solve the problem? Will that expedite the payments? That's what we want. We want the payments and the check in the hands of the people quickly. Remember, they're contract employees. They're not earning any money next month. Any response from any Ministry of Public Administration, perhaps?
In respect of queries, I think they come in various forms. You'll get a telephone call, as the Controller of Accounts would have indicated. Each ministry now has a liaison officer with whom an officer from the Treasury Division would liaise. And we do have correspondence being delivered through messengers to the respective HR units. But we are also looking at some IT-driven processes. We are working with the Ministry of Finance and the Controller of Accounts in terms of reviewing the processes. We are more IT-enabled in the public service, and we need to harness the use of IT and our computer applications and programs in order to facilitate effective and timely service delivery. So this also is one of our key transformation initiatives. But we do have messengers will bring the necessary documentation to the ministries.
I will ask Deputy Speaker to pose his follow-up.
Okay. Again, morning again to the body. In terms of the delays, amidst all the lack of staffing, the administrative issues, is there a financial issue with regards to some of these payments? I don't know if it's control of accounts.
Well, it would depend on the releases from the Budgets Division. Now, usually we would get releases on time, but because of our funding constraints, currently we do have files on hand that are ready for payment. However, due to funding constraints, there's a delay in getting the releases to make these payments, but we do get them within a few weeks.
Now, I know we are dealing with contract employees. Can the same be said for pensionable employees?
Yes.
Okay. So Comptroller, I guess I'm from what I get from you, the problem is not a problem of timely releases of funds from the Ministry of Finance. The problem is an administrative one with respect to the completion of files.
Yes.
Very well, thank you. Senator Amin?
Chair, I just want to bring a practical perspective into this. I have known for a long time that even public officers who retire, their standard waiting time to receive their pension and gratuity is usually 2 or 3 years if they're lucky. You are saying that this doesn't have to be so if you are operating at full capacity and if you have full cooperation of the respective ministries. You indicated that you have sent a note to Cabinet requesting about 20 additional staff members. What difference do you anticipate this complement to make in the processing of both pension and gratuity for staff, public officers, as well as contract officers?
Okay, just to make a correction, we have not yet sent the note to Cabinet. We have it in draft. It has to be sent to the PMCD, to Public Administration first, and that should go to them next month. with respect to the difference, well, it would result in the prompt payment of pensions and gratuities on time. It would reduce the time limit. It still can take up to about 4 months because it's voluminous. It's a lot of files. Additionally, the files also go to the Auditor General's department, and that usually takes about 2 months to process. So at each stage, it takes a few weeks, and that would have added up to 4 months.
Well, because I have, as a chairman of a regional corporation, I have experienced instances where persons, former employees, pass away while waiting to collect their pension or gratuity. What can I ask you for the information of the public? What is the procedure when the person, the recipient, dies while waiting? Before they receive the pension.
Yeah. Someone dies and his pension check is still outstanding. What happens?
Yes. Okay, well, then we would have to receive letters of administration from their next of kin. Those are the legal documents. We would continue processing the pension, but that would go to their next of kin.
Okay. And, okay, I need to follow up with what emanated from the submission recently of the Ministry of Public Administration. And this is just one question on contract employee. We have not asked the substantive questions yet as to what we can do with respect to the CPO's office and so on. But the question I want to pose is this: in the public's interest, if I am a member of the public with payments outstanding, I would like to know what is the keep back with my files. And if I could do anything to expedite, I will on my own try to do it. So what I want to ask from the Ministry of Public Administration is this: is there any impediment to placing these files on a database so that the recipient of a particular payment can know at each stage when he goes onto the computer, my file has left controller's office, or the controller of accounts has listed on this particular file documents outstanding, so I keep a track of it myself online, and I am able as a citizen then to provide whatever assistance I can provide so that I can put pressure on my employer, the ministry, to supply the necessary document. You see, if I am owed monies and I am a citizen and I need the money, I would like to know what I can do. So if there is a sticking point with some official in the ministry, I think I should know what it is, not only the controller, but I should know, and I may make a visit to the ministry myself, speak to the accounting officer, and really ask him or her to expedite the information or supply the information. Is there anything preventing that from happening now, to make the information available online via a specified code number so not everybody could get access to it? I, as a potential recipient, should know where my file should access the information and should be able to liaise with ministries. Ministry of Public Administration, is that feasible, unfeasible, practical, impractical? I know it is fair.
Chairman, at this time, officers do walk into their various ministries, people who are approaching retirement or those who have retired. And through their HR units, they will be provided with updates. Most times it may be, well, we are awaiting a performance appraisal from your supervisor. It may be that they are awaiting information from a previous ministry from which the person would have been transferred, or outstanding payments, arrears of salary, increments. These are some of the issues that may affect the individual. So the individual takes the responsibility and help the HR units and go physically. They might go to the particular ministry from which they may have been transferred and obtain records. They may assist in getting their performance appraisals prepared by the relevant supervisor. And of course, if it's a matter regarding arrears of increment or salary, you treat with the relevant accounting unit. But I will invite my Deputy Permanent Secretary, who is working along with me in terms of our review and upgrading of our integrated human resource information system. And we do hope in the full implementation of that system, we will have an employee self-service. So a person can go on, see their file from the time they started in the public service. They were able to review their performance appraisal reports, if there are any grievance issues, what have issues, how they have been resolved, their terminal benefits, and we do hope, as we work with the Treasury Division in looking at the pension administration review of their processes, that in time it will be fully computerized. People can access it from home through their mobile or their computer and see their records. But my Deputy Permanent Secretary will give further details.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes?
Thank you, PS. Chair, Permanent Secretary basically outlined a lot of what is desirable. Certainly we want citizens, retired public officers, their relatives, to be in a constant state of awareness as to how soon benefits will be paid, and as you indicated, where the process is at any one point in time. We would have gleaned thus far from the different comments that there are a number of agencies that are involved in the process, starting with the line agency where the person was employed or is employed, following up to the Comptroller of Accounts Department and even the Auditor Generals. So there are a number of agencies at play, and at any point in time, a document could be at any one of those places receiving attention. PS indicated that we do have at present the IRIS, Integrated Human Resource Information System, that is our IT solution for addressing human resource issues. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the processing of terminal benefits, whether for permanent establishment officers or contract, is heavily rooted in the existing HR system. IRIS, which is really the PeopleSoft application, seeks to modernize the human resource management processes and, of course, to integrate them. Because at the end of the day, in preparing a terminal benefit, you do have to bring to bear data information from a number of arms of the HR, whether it was date of employment, promotional dates, approvals, periods for vacation leave, and this applies to both permanent employees and contracts, whether it's terms of conditions. There's a whole slew of HR information that must be available, not only on file now, but available online in the system, so that at the end of the day, when the person is about to retire or has retired, you can pull and integrate all of this information as quickly as possible. I would just want to point to two activities that are taking place, whether inside the Ministry of Public Administration and Communications or in concert with other agencies. At present, I think we raised this at the first sitting of the committee. We are currently working with the Comptroller of Accounts Department, specifically the pensions branch, to assist that division in, how should I say, bringing the pensions module of IRIS. There's a dedicated module in IRIS that deals with pension benefits. That project is about bringing that module online, taking all the necessary steps to make sure that it can perform, it can draw all the information from the other modules and help in processing the terminal benefits in as quickly a time as possible. So Public Administration and Communications, we've been working with the Comptroller and her team on that. Secondly, within the Ministry of Public Administration and Communications, we have a team that is working on standardizing processes for human resource management across the public service. Again, there's sometimes divergence, different approaches across ministries in terms of how different procedures, practices are administered. And that in itself can lead to delays or setbacks in processing. We are trying to standardize processes.
Very well.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes. We do have follow-up questions. Deputy Speaker, Senator Amin, and then a new question?
No.
Oh, okay. Anyone with a follow-up?
Follow-up.
Follow-up,
Yeah.
yes.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Deputy PS. Mr. Deputy PS. The Integrated Human Resource Information System, how many ministries are using it presently?
All ministries and departments have been using IRIS.
Okay, how long, please? Average time? How long it has been in use?
IRIS has been in place since, I think, probably 2000 thereabouts.
Okay. So, for instance, I can actually call names. There's a particular employee who retired from the Ministry of Health. It's the only ministry the person ever worked with. And she has been delayed in receiving her payment. Now, this is not contract, right? This is not contract. This is a pensionable situation. The last conversation was that a document came from one of the department. It was stamped, but not signed. And that is the last document. So when the person visited my office, I told them to contact the relevant department and see if it can be walked through the system. That conversation happened as early as last week. And now we are hearing that this system is in place. The person only worked Ministry of Health and has been delayed for quite some time in order to receive payment. I don't know if you could share any light on not just the particular individual, but on the system, how it's supposed to work and how it's supposed to assist the individual in ensuring that they get timely processes of their gratuities. Because let's be real, after you would have contributed most of your life in the public service, contract or otherwise, and you go home, you would like to get, your resources. Secondly, is there a provision for partial payment of individuals' gratuity, pensionable payments, as the case may be, once we are assured that what we have in the system, the person could receive a 25%, a 50% accordingly? Okay. Any one of the panel, whether the PS or control?
Deputy Chair, let me just say that the second question regarding the partial payment will fall to the remit of the Comptroller of Accounts and the Pensions Division. But with respect to the first part of your question issue, notwithstanding the fact that IRIS has been in place for, nigh 18 years, HR management within the public service is still relatively paper-based, with a lot of record keeping being done on hard files. In the case of, I think conceptually, we like to believe that public officers who have spent their entire career or the majority of their career in one agency, we like to think that they should be in an advantageous position because they would not have been moving from agency to agency, and there's less challenge with record keeping. But even so, sometimes vaults where documents are held, vaults become packed, you need to go to another facility, there's wear and tear on documents. It's unfortunate in this particular situation, and others like it. But as P.S. Mendez indicated earlier, officers can walk the system, visit agencies and shops, and try to fast forward as best as they can.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy P.S., because what I now have information on is on this system, this IRIS system, which you said, in existence for the past 18 years, and the length of time to process a payment still remains inordinately long. So clearly there is a need to review the efficiency of this and to make some changes. We were told by the Comptroller of Accounts that public officers in other ministries do not supply information on a timely basis, and she would like to get the requested information within a month. Ms. Manchuk indicated that there is a management and a disciplining problem. So here we have a situation where my citizens have retired, either contract, and I'm focused on contract today, and there are certain inefficiencies that we need to address and find solutions towards, and that is the delay of public officers in supplying information. I will ask my two other colleagues who have raised additional questions to pose theirs, but I want you to give some thought, and we haven't brought in yet the CPO's office because the CPO on the last occasion raised some valuable points that we want to address as well. So for you who administer the affairs of ministries, I would like to know what will you recommend as disciplinary mechanisms for officers who are tardy in supplying information which seem to be at their disposal, but they are taking their time. What could be the problem and how could we solve it? And we will have to find a solution to the relationship between the CPOs, of the Controller of Accounts Office, and the various ministries. While she's decentralizing, we would like to know what could be done today to ensure that once the controller asks for information, the various administrative officers in the ministries will ensure that there is compliance within a reasonable time. Because unless there is compliance, there is not going to be a solution. What the controller has indicated to us is that the problem is not with the Ministry of Finance releasing funds. They release on a timely basis. It has to be with the completion of the files. We would like to know why officers do not supply the information and what can we do at this point to address that matter. So I will ask MP Niwala Hussain, and then I will ask Senator Amin to come in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question, given that contract employees are not insulated from unwarranted influences, what policy changes are proposed to protect contract employees against constructive and unfair dismissals? And I think maybe perhaps the MPAC and PSC could answer that question, please.
Sorry, PSC does not handle contract employment.
Okay. But, okay, I understand that. In terms of looking at, in terms of the mandate that you have been given, and understanding that contract workers are, ought to be protected constitutionally, is there any policy that will be guiding you in the near future to be able to bring in policy for contract workers so that there's equity with both public servants, public officers, as well as contract?
I think this is a CPO matter. I don't know if CPO is in a position to answer that.
CPO and MPAC?
CPO.
It's an interesting question because our contract employees, there are terms and conditions embedded in a contract, and we would have termination clause. We have certain clauses. When you're speaking of what, protection for the employee, I'm not very clear. I'm not very clear on exactly the issue.
We all are aware that there would be guidelines in a contract, and where also you have mandate if you were to be dismissed. But what about referring specifically to unwarranted influences? How do you deal with it, and how does MPAC deal with it? And in light of the fact that we do have a recent case of sexual harassment, how would you approach this? Is there a policy in place? And if not, are you looking at policies being implemented to circumvent circumstances such as these and others?
My colleague, P.S. Mendez, would like to clarify some issues here.
During the course of our operations as permanent secretaries in ministries and departments, we treat with two regimes of contract employment, which are administered very differently from each other. I will refer first as the contract employees, one regime, and the second as political appointees. The first regime is one in which the ministry employs contract officers under divisions and units with an organizational structure and job descriptions that are designed to support the mandate of the ministry. These contract officers are engaged through a competitive recruitment and selection process. The permanent secretary, through a well-evolved system of performance management, is ultimately responsible for administering this regime. These contract employees within the public service are subject to the terms and conditions outlined in the guidelines for contract employment in government ministries, departments, and statutory authorities, subject to the Statutories Act, Chapter 2401, prepared by the Chief Personnel Officer, these guidelines. The second system, in which Cabinet-approved contract positions of personal staff for a minister of government, is what we also administer in terms of the permanent secretary, accounting officer of a ministry. The difference between the political appointee and a contract officer is that the political appointee is not subject to the ministry's recruitment and selection process. The permanent secretary has no role in the day-to-day duties and responsibilities of the political appointee. Even though the appointee is engaged on contract, he or she is selected and reports to and works directly for the minister. The minister, by extension, determines whether the appointee has performed and is entitled to take steps to discontinue the engagement. It is important to understand, therefore, that ministers of government have the sole right to hire, manage, discipline, and treat with the performance management of his or her staff. The permanent secretary simply administers the salary and terms and conditions according to his role or her role as accounting officer.
Thank you very much. And if I may have a follow-up question, therefore, you indicated there are two, the contract, then you have the political persons, and there's a big difference in terms of the terms and conditions outlined. One, the contract is done, the job description is done by the permanent secretary or whoever accounting officer, and the political appointee, of course, is subject to the minister's process. My question is, if this is the case, then in light of the fact that terms and conditions are outlined by the accounting officer for contract officers, does the permanent secretary or the appointing officer have the mandate to allow or to consider a payment of undisclosed sums or outside of the salary? Is that a mandate of the ministry to pay to any employee ex gratia for any matter that may be out of the remit of the ministry, especially if it deals with a personal matter and not a matter that is related to the ministry?
As you're aware, the Honorable Prime Minister has appointed a committee to investigate issues surrounding the dismissal and payment of a particular employee to a minister, and out of professional integrity and ethics, I would revert to have the committee undertake its investigation and report.
But I would like to ask a question. Has the Ministry of Public Administration ever encountered any situation such as transpired ever in its life?
As far as the records show, there are certain areas in terms of the minister's sole discretion, and as I indicated, to hire, discipline, and if need be, terminate. Since it's a very important matter of public interest, the Ministry of Public Administration, with the responsibility for HR policy, is undertaking and will be undertaking a review and preparation of guidelines in consultation with the Chief Personnel Officer and other stakeholders.
Is it at all possible then, if there's any breach, that the ministry will seek to recover monies in the future, not just necessarily for this matter, but in terms of your policy guideline? Will you be looking to recover monies expended that ought not to have been done so. Will that be a part of your policy guideline?
Chair, I do not wish to preempt the work of the committee, and I will prefer that the report is...
Right, understood, PS. But really, a question that is arising from me, and then I will ask the Deputy Chair to come in, is with respect to the political hiring of persons. The tradition has always been that hiring in the public service has been done by the Public Service Commission. You go through the service commissions. You do not bypass the service commissions. We have seen contract employment bypassing somehow the regulations of the organizations that are enshrined in the Constitution. What I would like to know is under what power or under what law is the minister or are the politicians operating when they recruit employees? Is there a law? Is it administrative? Is it a cabinet note? What gives them the power? Because you see, they must be paid out of the public purse. Monies must be voted for that purpose. So I need to get clarification on the powers of a minister to hire, and really what those powers are, and are there limits to how much he can hire in relation to the permanent staff in his ministry? I just need guidance on that because I simply do not know.
Thank you, Chair. It's a cabinet-approved authority which outlines various personal staff that ministers of government are entitled to. And
therefore, all ministries will be operating, the accounting officers in the ministries will have that cabinet note, yes, which will then enable them to facilitate payments of monthly payments and so on, except the contract, the gratuity payments, monthly payments are going to be supported by this cabinet note.
As well as the salary and terms and conditions are approved by cabinet. These are the guidelines that at this time will guide permanent secretaries and accounting officers.
Very well. So we can bypass the service commissions by simply going cabinet note basis. I just want to get clarification. We can bypass the service commissions.
The service commissions department treats with established permanent staff in the public service. This regime deals with contract employment.
Exactly. Thank you very much. That clears it up. I will ask the Deputy Speaker to make his intervention.
But just for some clarity, Madam PS, and this action has been going on how long?
The cabinet decision
with regards to employees being hired on the political side of things.
This cabinet decision was approved in 1998. We can provide documentation to the committee.
I just wanted to ensure that was on the record.
Oh, I really would like to get the documentation, and if it is that the Ministry of Public Administration can trace the growth of contract employees in the state sector from 1998 to now, that's a 20-year period, it certainly will provide for me the vital statistics in relation to what is the role of the politician in relation to the role of the Service Commission in hiring persons in Trinidad and Tobago's public service. Thank you. I need information on that.
I wish to clarify that the cabinet decision gives the authority to ministers of government to hire certain personal staff. Yes. We have cabinet authority for contract positions when the Public Management Consultant Division has reviewed based on a submission from ministries and departments indicating that they want specific contract positions aligned to their mandate, we have to get cabinet approval. So there are two separate regimes.
Thank you very much. Information on the two regimes, because when did the second regime start? Did it also start around 1998 with respect to specific positions?
The CPO may be able to guide in terms of when that started.
Yeah. Simply for clarification, I need to get the timeline.
At this point in time, I'm not able to say the exact year, but it would have been going on prior to 1998. There was a policy approved by Cabinet on indicated the instances when you can employ someone on contract. And that would have been when there's a dearth of suitably qualified persons, or you have a particular project that you need additional staff for, you can hire them on contract. And the terms and conditions of that employment would be determined by the Chief Personnel Officer. Very well. Each ministry would make an approach to Cabinet, make the case for the contract employment, and then the CPO's office would come in to determine the terms.
Right. Thank you very much. You see, I'm just curious as to why it is that the service commissions are not involved in the process in any way, but I will get that input from them at some time later in the proceedings. I will ask the Deputy Speaker.
My previous question with regards to the partial payment, which is supposed to be for the control of accounts, I need to get that out of the way before we move on, please.
Yes, there have been some initial discussions on the matter, but we need to engage all the relevant stakeholders to determine the feasibility of partial payments, any legal implications, and the pros and cons.
Would that have to be in terms, when you say in terms of getting approvals from, that will be administratively among the various ministries, or you'll need to go beyond constitutionally, legal, you know, that sort of thing? When you clarify?
Yes, we have to determine whether there are any legal implications to making partial payments to pensions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could I ask you to check it out and then you could put yourself?
Okay. Senator Amin?
Chair, thank you. Just to continue, the issue of contract employees and the political influence. In the public domain recently, there are a number of workers being contract workers whose contracts have come to an end, and there's a political decision not to continue that, that contract or those contracts, and people are going home or losing their jobs in droves. And we cannot say that they are being fired because their contract has come to an end. As it pertains, I understand the difference with the members of the personal staff for the minister. I'm asking about the other contracts within the ministries, the internal operations of government ministries and departments. When it comes to hiring persons on contract, to what extent does the political directorate, the ministers and others, to what extent are they involved in the recruitment, in the selection, and in the termination of persons hired on contract? And perhaps you could include in your answer how that influences the quality of the employees you get. Does it augur well in terms of industrial practices? And how do we protect those employees from what could be seen as unfair dismissal based on political or perceived political allegiances?
Okay, I will take the opportunity to outline what is the process to employ someone on contract first. First, the ministry or department has to recognize that there is a need, which probably there's staffing issues where they cannot get public officers to do a particular job, or there might be shortages, and they decide to go the way of a contract. They will first have to do a note for cabinet to get that position on contract, with a full justification for going that way. That note first goes to PMCD, Public Management Consulting Division, who would go through the job description, the proposed job description, see if there really is a need for someone to be employed on contract. I think they would have probably gone through that process, the full process before, and then that note goes to cabinet. Cabinet approves whether a position will be a contract, whether they will, a contract position will be created. The process after that would be you would advertise, and they will go through the selection process with interviews, etc. And the minister then approves that selection of the person, but that is after the process would have been, well, we would have gone through the entire recruitment process. So the selection is really done through the process of interviews, and the minister goes to the minister for approval. When it comes to termination, that would be the only certain times you would have termination is either there's no longer a need for the position, you may have a issue of performance if you want to, and the termination clause in a contract you will kicks in, or basically that's it. Basically, that's it.
But
or the contract naturally ends, which is not really terminating it. It naturally ends.
Yeah.
The contract expires.
But for instance, you would have seen almost entire departments staffed by contract workers who would have had 1 year or 3 year contracts. And for instance, their contract would come to an end, and based on their performance appraisal by their supervisor, the contract would be renewed and they continue. But we have had instances, for example, in the Ministry of Social Development that I know of and I spoke in Parliament about, where at least about a unit with about 30 workers whose contracts came to an end. I don't know if there was a decision with regards to publicly advertising and then hiring a new set. So they were effectively fired or kicked out. Their contracts came to an end, yes. However, they had been functioning in that position. They were trained and they were operating well. And then with the change of the political administration, they were terminated. Well, we don't say terminated because their contracts came to an end, right? But a decision was made not to renew their contracts. However, many of those persons would have been hired under a different political administration, yes, but not necessarily because of their political affiliation. How do we protect workers who gain employment, contract employment, based on their qualifications, are performing well, but they lose their jobs or their contracts are not renewed when there's a change in administration and they suffer from, it is a form of victimization. How can we protect contract workers from that shift?
I would like to clarify that contract employment is for a very specific period. And when the approval is obtained for a contract position, it says exactly the period. So it's usually a 3-year period. You can employ someone for a year, 2 years, or 3 years. But if you employ someone for the 3 years and that 3 years therefore expires, there is no more position against which to employ someone on contract. So the ministry will have to go back to cabinet to get the position renewed. So it's not an automatic renewal of a position, and therefore there is really no automatic re-employment of anyone when a contract comes to an end.
I need to interject here. The question is, assuming that the need for the worker remains, and what Senator is saying is that these workers are then going to be replaced by other workers to supply the same need. Is there any protection for the worker who has the requisite skills, but he is changed in favor of another group of workers? Is it that in Trinidad and Tobago, contract employment is therefore not only based upon need, but it is based upon the intervention of the political directorate who may want to change one group with another? It's a straightforward question. I'd like to get a clear answer.
As I explained, there might be the need, but there's still the process to get the contract position approved, which takes some time. So you may end up with no position against which to hire someone, right? The introduction of, as I said, the selection process, which is fair and transparent, that you would advertise. All persons who qualify are free to apply, including persons who would have been in the position before. But it's a fair and transparent process to advertise a position. When you have the position, it's only then you can advertise it. And it's open for persons who qualify to apply.
Here, just one concluding comment before I ask MP Antoine to come in. Is it fair to inform the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago that if you have a contract position with the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for a term of 3 years, there is no legitimate expectation, or there should be no legitimate expectation on your part for any subsequent contract renewal? Subsequent contract renewal will be based on factors beyond your control.
So, it will be beyond your control.
Very well.
Mr. Chairman, one second.
But MP Antoine has been silent for quite a while.
No, I wanted to be specific in this particular instance. Again, if it is that we are trying to get a specific response from the panel, all right? I am not sitting over there, Mr. Chairman, but I think it's clear. A contract position is a contract of an agreement signed between two parties. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? And it's clear, if the period has come to an end, the particular date, the contract has ended.
Right, very well.
And I think that's clear based on
it has gotten clear from the CPO there should be no legitimate expectation on the part of the population who have a contract position with the government to expect any renewal of the contract. If it comes, he's happy. If it doesn't come, expect a non-renewal. I will ask MP Antoine to come in at this time to make his intervention.
The reality in the workplace is that it's changing. We have different people offering themselves for employment. We have those who will join the public service at a young age and intend to make it a career and go through the entire life in the public service. There are those, however, who prefer to be migratory from the private sector to the public sector, and that is where the contract employment comes in. All right? Somebody may not want to spend an entire career in the public service, but get experience in private sector, switch to the public service, and vice versa. In relation to the human resource planning, what arrangements are currently in place to forecast or predict the number of contract employees that will be over the next 10 years to support the efficient operation of the public service? In fact, contract employment is a reality in the public service. You cannot get away from it. It helps in the sense that it provides short-range employment, it helps it fill gaps, but is there any plan from your human resource department to look over the next 10, 15 years to see how you can support the operation of contract employment in the public service?
Good morning again. So the PMCD of the Ministry of Public Admin and Communications has been mandated by Cabinet in February this year to conduct a review of all ministries with respect to their organizational structure, looking at their functional, that is their technical and support areas, as well as the organizational structure. So that ministries will be doing just that, what you spoke about in terms of forecasting the human resource needs, both contract and established.
And in what you're doing, would you be also providing protection, as came up earlier, for contract employees in terms of dismissal, in terms of other activities in the area?
That is not within the remit of PMCD. We only deal with positions, not the people, or not policy with respect to how you treat with the human resources.
Who then would be responsible for that? What area of government is responsible for that?
I believe it will be the CPO with respect to policy and contract employment.
And any response from the CPO on that?
The Personnel Department is, at this point in time, reviewing the policy and guidelines for contract employment. I wouldn't be in a position to say any more than that at this point in time. Sir.
And a follow-up, I don't know who will ask, but in light of the fact that we understand that a contract is a specific period between one party and another, at the end of the day, you have a large cohort of contract employees who are young and tertiary level graduates. And of course, when they go, you have also institutional memory going as well with the job. If you had to consider renewing the contract, it means that you could negate training other persons. So my question really would be, are there any plans to amend the public service regulations to more effectively include or absorb contract employees in the public sector? And I also am asking another question, because I am aware that permanent secretaries do have the authority to hire contract workers on a 3-month or 6-month basis, which is quite often utilized unknowingly to even the minister. So my question is really, how many persons are in fact employed under this provision for that is provided to public permanent secretaries, and are they eventually absorbed as well into the public service?
I too am curious as to the ability of a PS to hire on a short-term 3-month basis. MP Antoine has another follow-up on this issue. Yeah, anyone can answer? Yes. Yes. Service Commission?
As far as the issue concerning the amendment of the public service regulations to accommodate contract workers, the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago in section 3(4)(c) expressly provides that contract workers are not public officers. And there's also a court ruling on this particular matter. So it's not a matter of amendment of the Public Service Commission regulations to accommodate contract workers. There has to be an amendment of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago.
They are not public officers with respect to what? Pensions and, okay. Right. Okay, so they cannot legitimately expect to receive the same type of package as a full-time employee would who has come through the Service Commission. But they are still employees of the state.
They are employees of the state, but they are not considered to be employment in the public service. It's a kind of absurdity. They are not considered to be officers in the public service, even though they're working for the state.
I understand their position. They are workers without the types of benefits that a permanent worker normally will have. Right, very well.
In light of the fact that you recognize it's an absurdity, and I mean, this is why I'm asking the question, really and truly, what meaningful efforts are being made to eliminate the short-term contracts in the public service? I mean, you understand it, you know it's a constitutional issue, but have you proffered any recommendations to the cabinet as to the way forward in terms of bringing an end to the short-term contracts? And again, I'm asking a question, no one is answering the question on the authority that the permanent secretary has to hire short-term contracts, and what happens then? Is it that they're filtered into a longer contract or even into the public service?
I need to shift gears. There are other issues we need to raise, so a brief response on that matter.
I respond because I see the Member of Parliament looking in this direction here. But this is a matter that falls within the jurisdiction of other bodies, not the Public Service Commission.
Okay, yes, and so noted, sir. I need to shift gears now, and we need to bring in the CPO and the Service Commission on this second line of questioning, because what arose from our last day of questioning was that the office of the CPO itself needs additional staffing, as it was indicated by me that I thought that the comptroller needs additional staffing to complete a lot of her files and finalize payments. The question with respect to the CPO and the Service Commission, I understand the Deputy Speaker has a keen interest in that matter. So I will ask the Deputy Speaker to raise that issue.
Okay. Now, the session really deals with contract employment. All right? According to the document provided with the statistics of how many vacancies exist with bodies and without bodies, right, there are a total number of 3,951 vacancies in the public service. Vacancies with bodies, vacancies without bodies. And this is a document, JSC Social Services Public Admin Inquiry into the State, and it's dated February 20th, 2018. Okay? With regards to contract employment, on that same document, contract employees, short-term and long-term, totals 2,793. Right? We have the CPO here. Right? We have the Public Service Commission, who was not here at our last session. How do we get to fill these vacancies, which I hope, if the vacancies are filled in the public service, will it minimize the idea of going towards contract employment, or that will remain separate and apart? So, Mrs. Manchuk, we need to hire and fill these vacancies in the public service. Guide this committee as to how we can go about it, keeping in mind that we have the Ministry of Finance present, we have the public administration present, and we also have the CPO present here today. So if we can go through a timeline of how we can appoint, promote, transfer, and discipline, as you would have said in your opening statement, in order to ensure that the public service runs as it's supposed to run.
Okay, I will begin, and then I might ask the DPA to respond. First of all, contract position versus established positions, there is a salary differential. That's the first thing. Secondly, in terms of the vacancies, while we might have 3,951 vacancies without bodies, some of the bodies in these vacancies are on contract, getting higher salaries for doing the similar job. Just to indicate, from my understanding of it, that figure, I don't know, because it will belong to the ministries. That you might be able to get that information from the ministries. But certainly, with respect to the filling of the vacancies, and indeed, we get recommendations from the ministries to advertise within and outside. If we advertise within and outside of the public service, the contract officers can apply for those positions. But it must be advertised within and outside of the public service to be able to capture the contract positions. So I don't know if there's anything else you would...
Clarification, do you advertise online? Do you use any online advertisements?
We advertise online, and we also advertise in the media.
Okay, what online platforms do you use to advertise these contract positions? Is there, do you use Facebook or something?
We don't advertise contract.
Oh, contract, yeah, I mean the full time, yeah.
We advertise the established positions.
Right.
We advertise inside by circular, and we advertise outside by advertisement in the media, and so for the positions within the public service. And contract officers, when we do that, can apply.
Okay.
Is there anything you might want to add?
And to follow up, so advertisement goes out, people apply, vacancies need to be filled.
Yes.
The timeline to fill in those vacancies, because we still existing in a period and in a timing where vacancies are not being filled.
Yeah, we are still existing in a timeline where everything is manual. And this has been going on for the last 30 years or 25 years. So it's a big problem when you, to sort through, to select. It takes time on a manual system. I would love to see us even receiving the applications online. That does not exist at the present.
To hire somebody?
Beg pardon?
To hire somebody, you're saying?
To hire somebody what?
No, to fill a vacancy.
To fill a vacancy, you get thousands of applications. It's a process that you have to follow.
So just the process to reach to the stage of getting the individual you want.
To get to the individual depends on the job, on the position. There are some vacancies where we get 8,000 applications. 8,000.
Okay, and as a solution to that,
in a manual system.
Are you aware, two things, what prevents an online system from being implemented? Is it financing, is it regulations, is it the law? And are systems in existence which will allow you to filter these applications in a very timely manner for my own edification?
You want to answer that?
Chair, currently we are exploring an online application. We have looked at several modules. Several firms have come and did demo their modules for e-recruitment. There's a particular one under the Integrated Human Resource Information System that we would like to look at again. Now, if we are to look at that, that is a separate module, and that also you'll need to purchase that. So that's another financial aspect. But we are exploring the online recruitment, and which will help us a lot in terms of dealing with the applications.
Financial constraint, is it that when you apply for funds, the funds for a program like this may take a while to be administered or disbursed?
That's a loaded question, but it depends.
It's a straight question. I want to know whether the Service Commission is financially constrained. Is it yes or no?
As all ministries and departments at this point
you
in time,
make a request, because you see, it is the public interest that we're looking at. You make a request for a system like this, which Ms. Manchuk said is necessary because you get 8,000 applicants for one position. You would like a software program. You would like to get it within a 3-month period. How much time normally will elapse before you are able to really sign a contract with a software company to say, we have the money, come and do the needful?
It could be as much as a year.
It can take a year to do
some
so that you can face a financial constraint in executing your function.
Yes.
Very well.
Just as a follow-up to the system that you're looking to employ eventually, would you be seriously considering having an auto-reply so that when persons submit their applications online, that they will be assured that it has been in fact received? Because, you know, when you bring something in person, you know you've handed it to a body, but online, oftentimes there is no response. Will you be putting that as a part of your mandate?
For most of the systems that we have looked at, there is an auto-reply.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
The acting appointments, how easy it is to appoint them permanently in their positions?
Promotions and permanent appointments, we are guided by the regulations in terms of the criteria we look at. For example, if someone is acting in an office, the permanent secretary or the head of department, they need to tell us whether they recommend the incumbent for that office, if it's a specific office to that ministry or department. If it's a generic office, we would need to advertise, or we need to look at the seniority list. It depends on the number of vacancies, it depends on the number of persons there are, or how long they have been acting. But we are guided by the regulations. It is easier if an office is specific to a ministry or department. That permanent secretary can recommend to us whether they wish to have that person appointed, and we do appoint persons in that manner. If not, they may ask us to advertise the office. When they ask us to advertise, it may be in and out of the public service, so that process is a little longer.
Thank you very much. On the last day we were here, it was indicated to members of the committee that the Office of the Chief Personnel Officer needs a certain number of staff members who are not currently at their stations. I would like to get from the CPO, what is the deficit in staffing at your office? And what are some of the challenges you are facing with respect to staffing your own CPO office? And what are your recommendations with respect to getting your full complement? Because I was made to understand, members of the committee were made to understand that unless the CPO's office is adequately or appropriately staffed, we may have a problem at the very top with respect to efficiency in the problem that we are addressing.
Based on the information I have, the vacancies in the personnel department, we have as many as 117 positions vacant and 54 without bodies. A good portion of those 117 are our technical officers. We have senior human resource advisors 1, 2, and 3, where we have quite a lot of vacancies. From my information I'm seeing here, we have 5 vacancies of senior human resource advisor, 9 of human resource advisor 3, 14 vacancies of human resource advisor 2. In that, though, we have 10 bodies, but they are acting. And we have 10 vacancies of Human Resource Advisor 1, but we have 7 bodies in them, which means at our lower level, we have quite a bit. Sorry, that information, we have 7 of the 10 Advisor 1 without bodies. My correction. And out of the 14 Human Resource Advisor 2, we have 10 without bodies. So it's quite critical.
Thank you. Now we understand the problem from the position of the Chief Personnel Officer. Service Commission, Ms. Manchuk, it is my understanding that it is the Service Commission, because these are full-time positions, which must recruit the persons to administer the affairs of the Office of the CPO. What is the problem? Could you take us through the problem with filling the CPO's office with the requisite staff members? Or what are the problems?
I will defer to the DP and ask her to answer. But again, from my experience, both within the Service Commission Department and from ministries and departments, it's a management issue as well, in that we may get a letter requesting the filling of the vacancies, and that would be it. Because in the meantime, more than likely, other things are happening with respect to the contract position. So the follow-up, there's a gap. So there needs to be better follow-up. But indeed, even when, and the DPA would speak to it, when we do begin the process of advertising, we would get a call saying, please put these on hold. So I would ask her now to go through.
Chair and members, specifically with the Personnel Department, which is headed by the CPO, and I look at it also in terms of turnover of staff and in terms of records. In 2015, we were asked by the then CPO to advertise certain positions in this Personnel Department. The positions were advertised, and we did receive applications. When the CPO changed, the last CPO did ask us if we could fill the vacancies with the incumbents. So he did put up a justification, and we tried as best as possible to see where we could fill given the person's experience and knowledge of the job. So we did do that. But what we did in essence is we sort of, well, the application process went a bit void there. So currently we are looking to see how we could go back to the process. Before the last CPO demitted office, I did ask him, how would you like us to proceed in terms of going about filling the offices? I don't think he gave us a clear answer, because we were supposed to go to one position in terms of advertising, which we did, and then we followed his recommendations given the status of the Personnel Department at the time in terms of assisting him with staff. So we did try to fill those vacancies at the time. What we did not know is that those persons were soon to proceed on pre-retirement leave. And most of these officers, they had more than 6 months, probably even up to a year, vacation leave before they proceeded. So it threw us off in terms of that. So the new CPO, she only assumed office on Monday. So we...
Welcome, new CPO.
So we are committed to working together to fill as many offices at the Personnel Department. We did have discussions with staff before, the last CPO, and members of staff, and they did give us where they would like to have bodies, and we have since provided some bodies to the office. But again, as Ms. Manchuk is saying, it's a management issue, because you need to come to the commission to say what are the offices you need filled and how you need to get them filled.
And follow up.
And follow up.
Interject here.
Sure.
We have the new CPO here who is now in place. New CPO and now established CPO. unless, and this was what was indicated to committee members, unless the CPO's office is fully functioning so that it can discharge its responsibilities for the state, we will have the perennial problem of contract employees filling temporary positions. What I would like to know is there continuous dialogue between your office and the Service Commission? Is there continuing dialogue? Once a week you relate, because it appears that these two agencies are now critical to addressing the problem at hand.
Well, as my colleague said, I assumed on Monday, and we have not yet had this discussion, but prior to my assuming, we had a brief discussion, and it is very high on our agenda for us to collaborate to see how best we can fill the vacancies in this personnel department, because it is critical to the efficient functioning of the department.
Your experience, I know you are just in the position, but you are an experienced HR officer. From your experience with collaboration with the service commissions, with ironing out all the difficulties which have existed in the past, do you think that within a year you would be able to sort out some of the problems so that you will be able to negotiate an arrangement and an accord with the service commission, and all the problems they are telling us about will be a thing of the past, maybe 12 months from today?
Well, I am very optimistic that we'll be able to do something within a year.
And now we're getting the parties together, so Ms. Manchuk has to come in.
Yeah, well, because 2 Tuesdays ago, the CPO came to the office to get her letter of promotion. And that was one of the first things we said, that, well, not Tuesday of this week,
yes,
previous Tuesday. And indeed, we made it very clear to the CPO that the CPO and the Service Commission, they need to work very closely together.
Very well. So there's a new dawn on the horizon then, and a year from today when a hearing is convened, I'd imagine we should have something more positive to report with respect to the arrangements between your office and the CPO's office. Okay, Deputy Speaker, and then Ms. I think she wanted to go. MP Niwalo? Okay, MP Niwalo, you can go ahead.
Gentlemen, you all are so kind.
And she's genuine about that.
Just to ask, I mean, I haven't heard that, you know, the former CPO had indicated that they wanted to put in, give the first preference to the existing employees. And of course, there's a little bit of a difference of opinion as to how we go forward. A public submission dated March 3rd, 2018 came into the Parliament stating that in some instances, contract employees are given the opportunity to submit a proposal for remuneration to the CPO, which they are told will be negotiated with the CPO. However, it was suggested that contract employees are seldom given the opportunity to negotiate terms and conditions with the CPO. Do the views of this person accurately reflect the reality? One, are employees engaged on contract within a public service given the opportunity to negotiate the terms and conditions of their contract? And subsequent to the submission of a proposal for remuneration, what does the process of negotiation entail? And will you be changing, if this is so, will you change it, will you enhance it, will you continue with it? I'm asking the CPO.
Well, over the years, with the growth of the number of persons employed on contract, it was difficult to negotiate with an individual. But the individual always had the opportunity that they can indicate what they would like their terms to be, which will be taken into account. But there was no face-to-face negotiation over the years. And given the, as I say, given the number, I don't see that that is really very practical.
But one of the main concerns, which was highlighted in almost all the public submissions received by the committee, was the delay in the finalization or confirmation of terms and contracts. And usually the contract would, the terms would be sometimes agreed to after or at the end of the the contract, and how can this system arrangement be improved, and can the personnel department explain whether pre-approved terms and conditions exists for certain categories of contracts, and what factors contribute to the significant delay in the confirmation of terms and contracts and conditions of employment contracts?
I will answer part, and then I may ask one of my directors to assist. The CPO would only know that we have to fix terms and conditions when a request is made from the ministerial department with a recommendation. There are certain documentation which must be provided, which will be cabinet approval, the job description, so we'll see the qualifications. So that our job starts to determine, when we start to determine upon receipt of a request from a ministerial department. We have no control how long they take to send it. So if a ministry takes 4 months to send it, and we don't have all the documentation, then there'll be correspondence to get the appropriate documentation. So it depends on when it starts in the first place. Well, I had just a little while ago indicated how many vacancies we have. And we also are quite aware, I think, of how many thousands of employees we have on contract, all of whose terms have to be fixed by the Chief Personnel Officer's office. So it is a monumental task. We have been putting systems in place, based on my understanding and from my history, to try and speeden up the process. We have some positions where we have terms and conditions already established, and I would ask, those are standardized terms. So, for example, I'm not giving an example, a business operations assistant, if you take on one, a ministry employs one now, there are terms already fixed for that position. We have some of those, we have in the communication stream, legal, and HR. So some positions, if you take on someone on contract, you are aware what the terms can be for those. But outside of those, you have to come to the personnel department with a request, with a recommendation for us to consider.
Thank you very much, CPO. We are at 12:30. The Parliament will give me a little bit of leeway to conclude today's hearings, but I will ask the Deputy Speaker to come in to pose the final query today. Yes. Before I conclude.
In a submission provided by a member of the public, he gave a reason for contract employment, and it reads like this. Non-traditional positions are constrained by rigid structures. It takes too long to find persons who are suitable to fill specific positions. The public service has grown in complexity, hence the need for alternative recruitment. Trinidad and Tobago now demand highly specialized and professional services in a technology-driven world. For contract workers, due recognition must be given to the mix of knowledge and skills that are required for enhanced organizational performance that will lead to transformation. And if we could probably get a remark from each departmental head on what they think of that remark as being a reason for contract employment.
Yeah. May I?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I see nothing wrong. I agree with this statement. My issue is, at the present time, there are 13,800 people on contract. What needs to be determined is what is going to be the size of the public service. There's nothing wrong with contract employment, but we have to have an understanding of how many people are going to be on contract and how many people are going to be in established positions. And as MP Antoine had said, in the UK and Canada, and so it's, public service is seen like a revolving door. Nobody stays, nobody's going to be staying as now from cradle to grave. It's like between 10 and 15
Very
years.
well. And question to you. The Constitution is very clear with respect to the role of the service commissions in staffing the public service. The Constitution is not at all convoluted in that way. You have a role in ensuring that there's staffing in a number of areas. Do you see a role for the Service Commission in the recruitment of contract officers?
Well, initially, it's my understanding that initially the Service Commission Department used to handle the contract employment. And by a court judgment, we were told that we could not because they are not public officers. Once you get that sorted out, we could look at it.
Sort that out, you see a role administratively and in the area of efficiency for the Service Commission to be involved in the recruitment of contract officers.
Well, the thing about it's a court judgment.
Yes, very well.
So,
Understand the court judgment, but I'm looking at it technically and administratively.
we do not handle terms and conditions, of course. But you're speaking with respect to appointments. And so within our mandate.
Yes.
It could be possible.
Very well. Thank you very much. That is the last. I got a nudge from my colleague, MP Nawala Hussain, and I will indulge her for a brief last question.
Okay.
Last one question, MP.
Well, it's a follow-up and then a question. The first one is going to be very short. And MPAC had indicated in our last discussion on the manpower planning and impact of contract employment. You said that MPAC had recruited consultants to begin an internal manpower planning review. Could you tell me who the consultants are, please? And of course, I have a follow-up question, which I will. So while MPAC is getting that answer, you have it?
Chair, member, we did not indicate that we have hired any consultants for manpower planning. I believe it was from the Ministry of Labor, the PS would have indicated so, not Ministry of Public Administration and Communications. However, as the director of PMCD has indicated, at this time, the PMCD is undertaking a review of the operations and functions of the various ministries and departments. And from the analysis of the data, certainly it will help in crafting a manpower plan and HR needs of the public sector.
Okay, just
thank you very much. And the last question.
No, this is a follow-up. This is not a question.
Okay, but it's you have this follow-up is your absolute last, MP.
Absolutely last.
Yes.
When we indicated about the contracts being signed on after the term of employment has ended, sometimes you found that contract employees have had to repay the government due to overpayments. And I'm asking, is the Ministry of Finance or Personnel Department think this to be a fair and reasonable policy or practice? And is the Ministry aware of the Cabinet minute dated March 28, 2013, which states that the interim terms of remuneration be made personal to the employee and that their gratuity is calculated using those terms in the absence of a finalized remuneration package?
A response? Become true? Is anyone going to respond? No one wishes to respond? Okay.
I think we need to look into that date. I'm not sure about that 2013, you said? Minute?
28th of March 2013.
MP, do you require anyone specifically to answer the question?
No.
I think it would be the Comptroller of Accounts because the Comptroller would indicate that the repayment has to come, not so, Comptroller?
Yes, but I still don't understand your line of questioning.
Oftentimes, a person has received overpayment because the contract has not been finalized. So in other words, you're brought into the position, you said that this is your salary and gratuity, whatever it is, it's $5,000 a month. But when the actual terms and conditions are actually signed, which is sometimes finalized after the contract, you're being told it's really $2,500. And now the employee is made, or the ex-contract worker is made to repay the government the overpayment, which I'm asking if the ministry and the CPO consider this to be a fair and reasonable policy or practice, and if the MPAC and CPO is aware of the Cabinet minute dated March 28, 2013, which speaks to this matter.
Right. Yes, CPO.
I'm aware that I'm aware that recently the decision was sent out that if your interim salary is higher than what is determined by the CPO, you can approach Cabinet to get that salary personal to you, the individual who is in the position. However, someone else comes into that position, they will have to be paid the salary that has been fixed for the position. I'm aware of that, but I don't think that is the 2013 decision.
Right.
That
What
you
I would
referred to.
recommend now, since we are really running out of time, I will ask our Secretariat to pose a written question, and we will seek to get the response after you have deliberated on the issue which has been raised. At this point in time, I will ask the leaders or the lead representatives of the following: Ministry of Public Administration, Ministry of Finance, Public Service Commission, and the CPO's office, to offer brief closing remarks to the committee, and then I will close with my own closing remarks. So may I ask closing remarks from the Ministry of Public Administration and Communications.
Thank you very much, Chairman and members of the committee. I wish to express my thanks for the committee for this inquiry into contract employment. I wish to state that in ministries and departments, we do have systems in place where we provide orientation and induction of new employees, whether they are public officers or contract employees in the service. We apprise them of the role of the ministry, also inform them about their role in the ministry with respect to their duties and responsibilities. We have HR units who have developed guidelines, orientation booklets that help persons coming into the public service understand the environment in which the public service operates. We also have mechanisms with respect to grievance procedures. We have in some ministries the Joint Consultative Committee, but we do have steps that an employee can take to bring any claims or allegations through their first supervisors, and you can escalate it right up to the permanent secretary. I wish to ensure and assure the public that once grievances are listened and heard, and many times in writing, the appropriate actions and relevant interventions are made at the permanent secretary level or other levels in the public service.
Yes, thank you very much. That I would ask the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Finance. I know we did not pose any direct questions to you today. That is because in all the deliberations, the Ministry of Finance seems to be really above the problems. It seems as though that you are complying. So just brief closing remarks from you, Madam Permanent Secretary.
That's quite all right, Chair. I just want to thank you and the members of the committee for allowing my colleagues to be able to distill the issues and to give voice to the existing policies and procedures that are followed with respect to human resource management in the public service. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I will ask the Service Commission Department to close.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to thank you and the public for giving us the opportunity to understand the role of the Public Service Commission, and we look forward to the exercise that is being carried out by PMCD with respect to all the organizational structures for the ministries and departments, so that we would have a proper organizational structure to be able to undertake all that is required of us, together with an IT system that will allow us to function as we should function.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Manchuk. CPO?
Well, I thank the committee for the opportunity to come before you all to clarify the CPO Personnel Department's role in relation to contract employment, and to give some assurance that we are working as best as we can to satisfy the needs of the ministries in getting the terms and conditions of their contract employees to them as quickly as we can. But they need to help us, because if we don't have all the information, we will not be in a position to consider the request. But we are trying our best, and we'll keep working towards it. I referred to guidelines earlier. Those revised guidelines for contract employment before Cabinet as we speak. So we look forward to some changes going forward.
Thank you very much, CPO. And I would like to present some points that I have been able to distill from the deliberations this morning. First off, we did pose a number of questions to the Comptroller of Accounts on the issue of timely payments of gratuities, and it was indicated to the committee, now on the public record, that the Comptroller of Accounts, the Office of the Comptroller of Accounts is looking at the decentralization of pension payments by the various ministries, since the calculation, pardon me? Contract gratuity payments, yes. Contract gratuity payments, because the computations seem to be straightforward and rudimentary. That there is a need for additional staff at her office, and with the staff complement that she has, it is likely that the time lag between the termination of one's contract and the payment of the contract gratuity can be considerably shortened. It was advanced that there is good reason for an employee or a contract employee who is no longer employed to be able to track his file. He can do it manually. He can liaise with members of his old employment office, but he should be able to track online the progress of his file with respect to outstanding payments. There is a need to have more information on employees online as well. We were advised by the Ministry of Public Administration that there is a program, but maybe it needs a bit of tweaking. The issue of partial payments of these contract gratuities is something that ought to be considered. It has been raised, and that can, in fact, if it is implementable and if there are no legal impediments, then that could alleviate some of the hardships of contract employees who are waiting for an inordinately long time for their payments to be processed. It was determined unequivocally that contract employees in the state sector should have no legitimate expectations with respect to re-employment, because a contract is a finite document that there's a date at which you assume office and a date at which you are expected to demit office, so that the expectation for re-employment is not something that should feature into the contract employee. It was advanced to us that advertising for positions, all positions, certainly by the permanent position by the CPO office, is online, and that we are looking at a lot of online formats to ensure that the ads reach as wide a section of the population as possible. A lot of individuals of varying age groups are now using the online platforms so that they can obtain their information there. It was advanced to us that the manual system in use by the Service Commission office is really inefficient, and that the only issue I want to raise with the Ministry of Finance is the expeditious release of funds for making various departments computer usable, so that when departments want to upgrade their systems, one expects that the funds should not take a year to be released, that we should move quickly, because unless we do that, the online system is going to be there as an albatross with respect to efficiency in the discharge of our functions in the state sector. There is now going to be continuous liaison between the CPO and the Service Commission Department, because it is our understanding that unless there is a change at the top, at the level of the CPO, unless that office is fully complemented, and unless the CPO has her complement of staff, it will have repercussions across the entire state sector, so that there is a need for that level of dialogue, so that we can have the CPO's office with a full complement of staff. It was advanced to us that public officers can sometimes be tardy in releasing information. We would indicate to all officers of the state that the employees who are supposed to release this information should in fact be induced to so do. What the procedures for discipline for tardy officers are, I do not know, but I think it would be left up to the public servants themselves, the administrative officers, to ensure that the compliance time of 1 month maximum requested by the Comptroller of Accounts for the release of information should be adhered to as far as is practicable. One, of course, understands when the information is not available, that the information is not in the hands of the public officer to give the Comptroller of Accounts. But when the information resides somewhere within the ministry, it ought to be easily retrieved. It ought to be accessed from the files of the employee and sent over to the Comptroller expeditiously. And it is now 12:48. The Parliament has been very kind and gracious in this very important exercise in giving me 3 more minutes. I would like to thank all members of the panel who are here with us today. We have been edified. I am sure not only committee members, but members of the public are now fully aware of the various issues surrounding contract employment in Trinidad and Tobago. The stakeholders have begun to interact, and have started the discourse with respect to efficiency in the public service. So I want to thank you for being here and for sharing with us your expertise and your information and your knowledge of human resource management in the state sector. I would like to thank my colleagues on the panel who have been with us for the duration of the hearing since morning. I also want to thank our loyal listeners who have been listening on to this very important topic, and to